presentation. I'm hitting the recording button, and ladies and gentlemen, we can start. Okay, it has started. Okay, very good. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Acolad Community's Roundtable. Some of you already know me, but for the record, I'm Marianne Edvilla, so I'm Acolad Community Manager. So I'm the face and voice behind all messages you can see through communications from our internal teams on the website, blog, social media, and I'm also coordinating events like webinars, training sessions, and roundtables like this one. So today I am with 4 awesome ladies to discuss what it takes to build trustful partnerships between translation agencies and freelancers. So how's it going to be? So you have all muted cameras and microphones, but you can ask all your questions in the chat window. And if you need any help during the roundtable, ask directly here, and Ludivine, our dear moderator, will help you. If you want to react, don't hesitate to use the emoticons at the top of the screen, except the last one, the raised hand. And we might have not enough time to answer all questions at the end, but ask them anyway, because we will compile them and give you the link to see the answers afterwards. And if you have any problem, like sound problems, video issues, don't worry. Since the session is recorded, you will have access to any bits you may have missed. So no worries about that. Okay, so to start with, I let my guests introduce themselves. I'm going to start with my freelance translators. I'm starting with Enos.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Well, I'm Inés Sancho Arroyo. I'm a Spanish translator. I translate from English and French into Spanish. And well, I've been working with Acolad for several years now, I think since 2004, if I'm not wrong. And so it's a long relationship, and well, I'm happy with it. And well, I hope I will be able to give you some clues about this topic.
Very good, thank you, Ines. And now to Magali.
Well, hi everyone. My name is Magali Blaron. I've been working as a freelance translator since 2013 and working with Acolad for a long time, mostly with Textmaster, actually. My specializations are mostly fashion, cosmetics, luxury, and tourism. And like Ines, I hope I'll be able to give a few interesting clues or a piece of advice to everyone. So can't wait to get started, actually.
we can't wait either, too. Thank you. And now let's introduce first Anne.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anne Huang. I've been with Acolad from Legacy Amplexer side here in Berlin ever since they were Euroscript, in fact. So for the last 15 years, I've been here located in the Berlin office in the English team. So I started out as a coordinator, language coordinator, and then eventually became team leader. And then a couple of years ago, I became resource manager for the target language English.
Great, thank you, Anne. And to finish the presentations, Tanya.
Hello, everyone. Tanya Mayer is my name, and I am project manager and team leader in Acolad in the Swedish office. And I have been actually working for the company since 2000, but it wasn't Acolad at that time. It has been changed names a few times, but so I mostly worked as a project manager. So I have quite a lot of daily contact with translators in my daily work. And I really like that, enjoy it.
Yeah, that's the main topic of the day. So I can't wait to hear your thoughts about daily contacts with the freelancers. Before we start, I have some icebreaker questions to get to know a bit better. If you had a magic wand that grants you one extra skill, either a social skill, a technical skill, etc., what would you choose, Ines? What would you choose?
Well, I'm quite sure about that. I would have a superpower to solve technical problems when
Okay.
Yeah, it's the main obstacle.
Yeah, I understand that. What about you, Magali? If you had this magic wand?
If I had a magic wand, well, I think Ines made a good point, but for me, it would probably be the ability to speak any foreign languages, because I really, really love languages. So if I could, just be able to speak whichever I like to, just like that, it would be fantastic.
Yeah, I think really fantastic for everyone. That's a good point too. What about our language services managers? If you had this magic wand, what skill would you like to have? Tanya.
Oh, wow, that's an interesting question. But if we would say in general terms, I would just love to be able to be teleported somewhere when I need to.
Wow.
So that would be like really the best. I have to be right there right now.
No commute.
No commute, no nothing. Just, yeah, magically appearing in the right place in the right time.
Yeah, and less expensive plane tickets.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And another question, what is the personality trait you are the most proud of? For example, Tanya.
The personality trait most proud of, you mean for myself or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I guess I think it's mostly that the ability to listen and to be, have the humility, to be humble and listen to someone else, to other people. So I think that's maybe one trait that one could say it's good.
Yeah. What about you, Anne?
I am very organized, which people around me might not think is an excellent trait, like my family, but at work in my professional life, I think that it serves me very well. So I would name that being very, I always say organizational skills are everything, makes everything else easier. So that would be it for me. What I'm known for, I think.
Yeah. Okay. And same question for Magali and then Ines.
Well, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to steal the others' answers, but I'm a very good listener. So that's something that is really important to me. And I think that's something my friends really appreciate. And I'm also really, really organized. So this is something I'm really proud of in terms of professional life.
Okay. And Ines.
Well, I would say I'm quite organized at work, not in my personal life, but I need to be organized at work. So I've been practicing a lot. And another one, well, I try to be helpful when problems arise and so on. I think that's important when you're working with other people and to create good partnerships.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, now let's start. So the first thing we do when we are in contact with translation agencies is to apply. So I'm going to start with questions to mostly Anne, because this mostly is about vendor management and resource management. But could you first explain the difference between vendor manager and resource manager, just for the record?
Sure. I would say that the vendor manager is at the very front end of the acquisition chain, initial contact, from recruitment and kind of the hunter. And then the resource manager would maintain that relationship and, be a point of contact for the freelancers as they establish the working relationship on an ongoing basis.
Yeah. Okay. So you do a daily report, and you too, Tanya, with vendor managers on applications, etc. So the vendor managers are providing the resources for you.
Yes, exactly. So that is where we get to, so for example, if we have any specific language combinations, that's where I turn to the vendor management to get help with that first. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And what channels does Acolad use for recruitment mostly? So we have the application form, but do you use social media like LinkedIn and other marketplaces like Pros? Which ones are used the most? Anne or Tanya?
Oh, yes, I've used Pros definitely for recruiting. I haven't used LinkedIn. Mostly Pros, just from my personal experience. If there's no one in our database, then that would be my go-to.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to build on with Magali and Enos on that question. Do you use mostly which channels do you use mostly to see application jobs? Do you use Pros, LinkedIn, or, for example, Enos? Which one do you use?
I've used Pros, but not to apply spontaneously, but to reply to job offers.
Okay.
I've got some work last summer. I got some work from LinkedIn with a recommendation, and well, I don't know. I must admit I don't apply very much because I have fortunately I have a lot of work, so I don't really need to apply. But I've used in the past. I've used Pros a lot.
Okay. Okay. Do you what would you like to say, Magali, about that?
I think I'm a bit like Enos. I've used Pros in the past to apply to a couple of offers. And now I would say that mostly I've been using LinkedIn lately, but not so much about, looking for job offers, but mostly to just talk about what I do on a day-to-day basis. And this has enabled me to have some interesting contacts, like a few agencies or project managers contacting me directly through LinkedIn to talk about possibilities or job offers or things like that.
Yeah, that's interesting because actually LinkedIn and Pros are more like for networking than really applying for a job. It's like a mouth to ear process when applying, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And I would add that, well, when at the beginning I was starting as a translator, I used very much Pros with all these POOs to meet other translators. And I must say that most of the contacts I made with other agencies were through other fellow translators who talked to their agencies about me. So I think that works a lot, networking.
Yes, I agree with Ines. It's really important, and I think it's also something I think is important when you work on your own to have a network of other people you can share ideas or sometimes concerns with. Yes, sometimes someone is just going to contact you because another translator said something nice about you. So I think it's something that is really important. It's easy to do it. I think through LinkedIn, it's quite easy to find other translators and to network with them.
Yeah. Would you like to build on what Magali said, Anne?
Yes, I was actually thinking the same, that it's more for networking. And I was thinking back to a project, I think it was a public project that we had looked for linguists for very exotic combinations on prose, which was then, not for recruiting in general, but for this project, one project that worked quite well. But for my personal LinkedIn use, it's a lot about networking. Or if you were in contact with a vendor, then maybe they'll contact you on LinkedIn, and then you can add them to your contacts. So it's a nice addition, I would say, to the daily work.
Okay, and so when it comes to applying, Tanya, and according to you, what should all candidates avoid doing when they apply to Acolad or to a translation agency in general? What are the traps to avoid? What are the best things to do when applying? Is there a specific process to do? For example, Anne?
Sure. I've had interviews, for in-house translators, for example, and there's a whole process there as well. I think responsiveness is at the very top of that list. If they respond via email without, us having to wait 3 days, because that's also indicative of how quickly they'll respond to job offers and requests and so on. So that would be the first thing that I notice, when establishing contact.
Do you agree with Anne, Magali, Enos? Do you agree about responsiveness?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, it's vital.
Yeah. What is responsive according to you? And is it responsive? You have to answer within 1 day or less, or?
I would say the same day is good, or the next day. It doesn't have to be, this very hour. But I think for emails from 1 day to the next, I would say is good responsiveness.
Okay. Okay. When you have applications sent by freelancers via email, what do you say? Because at Acolad you have to go through the application form. So what do you tell freelancers that don't go through the application form to give their applications to Acolad?
Well, that is something that is a standardized process, and also makes, cuts down on email attachments and so on. For example, signing the form directly in the system, and then it's uploaded to the profile. It's automated, so it should make it easier for everyone. And that's also a sign of being, being able to, I would say, follow instructions and see what's, what the requirements are. And of course, it's legitimate to ask questions always. If something's not clear, but that to me would be a sign that someone is willing to look at the steps to take and really follow those.
Okay, that's interesting. Magali, Enos, do you think that we have the recruitment process for Acolad, but do you have the thing that we have different recruitment processes for all agencies? Do you notice some relevant differences?
Oh,
yes. Yeah.
Which one of them, for example?
Well, some agencies require that you go through some sort of really standardized process, like you fill in a form and then you send your resume or CV, whatever. And then someone is going to get back to you, maybe with a translation test. I've noticed that some agencies don't require a translation test. That they're just going to ask about your expertise, your experience, maybe your portfolio if you have one. And then they're just going to send you a first paid translation to do, which will probably serve as a test translation, but it's not labeled as such. And I've noticed that for other agencies, it's really important that you follow the steps. And I think that Anne made a really, really good point that if you want to apply, you have to prepare your application, go on the website, see what the agency expects you to do. And then you have to just do it that way to show that you've actually done a bit of research into. I think it's not a good thing to just send thousands of emails like that. You have to prepare each application depending on the agency's process.
Okay, yeah, that's very interesting. Let's hear what Enos thinks about it, and we'll go to the next topic.
I quite agree with Magali. I think it's, I really like when agencies require all these steps to take, because it gives me an idea of their professional side. When somebody just asks, are you able to translate this, and don't ask for a test, even if it's not, I don't mind doing unpaid tests, but it gives me a sense of how they work. And I really appreciate that. So I get some guarantees that they're going to be professional and work well, and having everything standardized and so on.
But even if there is not one, I can confirm from my side, Magali, of the situation that the first translation will indeed be carefully evaluated, whether it's declared as such or not, and you know, scorecarded or undergone some type of evaluation. So yeah, that's something to consider, of course. And then the feedback should always be given, whether it's a formal test translation or not, you know, just to establish that working relationship, and so that also you know where you stand. I'm sure that's interesting for you as well, whether the customer or the agency was happy with what you delivered.
Okay, so in a nutshell, you have to take care of the first impression. The first impression always does all the communication work, actually.
Very true.
Yeah. Okay, I think it would be one of the main features we are expected to see on both sides, from translation agency and also from freelancers, which leads us to what we expect regarding Acolad requirements, regarding profiles. So Tanya and as language managers, language service managers, sorry, do you rely solely on translation degrees or linguistic degrees or experience? I mean, do you expect other skills than linguistic ones when freelancers apply to Acolad?
Well, yes, I can say from the production's point as a project manager that it's for us it's mostly that the translator has had experience. So I mean, not solely on degrees or the education as such, but that they have a record that they have experience within the subject matter. And I think the knowledge about the subject matter is something that is important, most important, I would say. So that is one of the things. I don't know, Anne, if you...
Yeah, I mean, I do scan for that information, you know, degrees and CV and so on. But if someone has worked as a technical translator for the past 20 years and happens to not have a degree in the field, then that also speaks for itself. I would say that he or she is knowledgeable in that area, and, you know, give them a chance.
Okay, what do you think about Enos?
Well, yes, I think it's very important to have some experience. When you finish your degree, you know something, but you need to get some experience, know how it works, be able to do plenty of research. Not only your linguistic background, but also you need you need to well, you have to work on it somehow, but so somebody needs to give you some work before you have experience. But yes, I think it's the experience is very important, and I think it's a linguistic background. I think it's important as well. Although many translators do not have a linguistic background and they are very, very good professionals. But I think it's important to be able to justify all the choices you make when you translate. And so I think both of them are important, experience and degrees. But at the beginning, you need to begin somehow.
What about you, Magali? Do you agree with Ines?
Yes, totally. I think experience is really important, and I think you need to also show that you're an expert in the subject matter. So it's not necessarily because you have a degree, but it can be because you really show what you do on a day-to-day basis to stay informed. Get all the information, do some research too. So I think if you want to be seen as an expert in your areas of specialization, you need to show the agency why they should trust you and why they should give you work, because you really are an expert. So show them why and what you do to be an expert, and to remain also an expert, not just because you had a degree 20 years ago, but you need to know what's going on in that industry right now, today.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah. So let's resume. Experience, a degree in translation or a linguistic, as long as you have experience besides. What are other skills? We have responsiveness. We also have maybe kindness, because we are talking about having positive relationships between translation agencies and freelancers. So do you agree all that we have to be kind?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yes, obviously. But how do you express kindness because I think that most exchanges are done via email, or how do you express kindness in exchanges for a project or anything else?
Yeah, I would say that it's in the communication. When we communicate as project managers with the linguists, of course, a lot of the parts now are a bit automated. You send a request and maybe not right, but I always feel that it's good if we write a message, like a personal message to the translator also. And I think that that's when also the kindness comes back also with from the translator as well, in the communication, to have at least some personal communication. I think is good. And also I think that is one of the biggest parts to create a good relationship, within the project, for example.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I have a question for Ines and Magali. We have answered a bit that part, but what do you expect from a translation agency when applying? We have given some features, but do you have more inputs about what do you expect from a translation agency when they are sending jobs or contacting you?
Well, I think giving information, plenty of information about the working process is very important, to know all the steps they take, whether there's proofreading afterwards, how everything happens, and getting, well, of course, all the information about the project. I think it must be clear from the start, not giving plenty of messages afterwards, changing things or updating files. I think that can happen sometimes, and it's not a problem. But when it's regular, when it happens regularly, it hinders the working process. And I think it's very important to know at least the word count, clear word count, clear delays, and the deadlines. And I think it's very, very important to know all these things from the start, offer project, and it's very important from the beginning of the relationship to know all the payment terms, how everything is going, not to have surprises afterwards.
Okay, Magali, I think you agree with Enos, unless you have something else.
No, I think she said it all, and yeah, just know where you're going. That's something that is really I appreciate. And yes, from the project itself to the billing process, it's something that is really reassuring as a freelancer when you know exactly how things are going to happen. When you don't know, it creates a lot of anxiety, and it's not easy for us to work in the good conditions.
Yeah, totally. So transparency and honesty are one of the keys for this relationship between freelancers and translation agencies, because you need to have all information to run the project as smoothly as it is. So yeah, that's definitely an excellent point to raise. Okay, so one of my questions, much more for giving examples. Magali, what is your best memory? What was the best moment when you applied to a translation agency? Do you have an experience that marked you most, and why?
Well, it's it was when I was really just beginning. So I had some experience, but I was really starting. And I applied to, I sent an application, and because I had seen a job post on Pros, so I sent my application, and then someone just contacted me straight away, sending me a detailed email about how things were going to happen with a translation test. So I did the test, and I think I did the test on the same day. And so I sent the test back. First thing, I received an email to say thank you for the test. We'll get back to you in a couple of days, which is something I appreciate too, just to know if it's going to take a few days or a few weeks, or to get a feedback. And I would say like 2 hours later, my phone rang, and it was someone from the agency ringing me and said, "Well, we've just gone through your test and we really liked it. It was great." So when you start, it's the sort of thing that makes you feel better. It's even better than just an email saying, "Oh, it was good." It's like a phone call, and you have someone who say, "Oh, it was a good job," and like, I think like 2 or 3 days later, we started working together, and still working now. So
wow.
For me, it was my best memory.
That's great. And when it comes to best memory, we have worst memories, but because it's like a constant pair. And what was your worst experience?
Well, I don't know if there's one in particular, but there are a couple I remember as being really bad. It was mostly because of a lack of communication. It's like, so you go through the application process, you do everything that the agency asks you to do, and then you just receive an email that says, "Okay, we've received your test, we'll get back to you in a couple of days." And after 2 weeks, you haven't heard from them, so you send them an email and say, "Okay, did you have time to go through my test?" "No, not yet, but we'll get back to you in a couple of days." And it goes on and on like that. And maybe after like 3 or 4 weeks, you're just going to say, "Okay, so yeah, we went through it and it was okay." All right. Can I have a detail or something? And then they might go on with the application itself, and just ask you to send all your information, but then you never hear from them again. So it happened to me, I think, twice in the last 10 years, and I was just wondering, what's the point? Are you just adding people to your database, or it's quite difficult to know where you stand in that situation, because if you don't need freelancers right now because you're already working with other people, that's fine, but at least say something, not just wait until the freelancer gets back to you and ask and ask and ask again and again. I think it's, for me, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't give me a good first impression on my side.
Yeah, I understand perfectly. And what about Enos?
Well, my best experience with was recently with an agency who contacted me via pros, and they gave me straight away all the information about the terms of the agency, all the conditions. I mean, everything. There was everything, plenty of links and everything. It was great. And I did a couple of jobs more for them, and they worked very, very well. Everything was very clear, transparent. It was great. And my worst experience was with an agency a few years ago who contacted me. They offered me a very interesting job, and I booked. They asked me to book my availability. I booked all my availability for 1 week, and afterwards I had to reject other job offers, among which a very big one, which was urgent and I would have had to work during that same week. I had to reject it, and in the end, they didn't. I didn't hear anything at all from them. Not even, oh, sorry, this project was cancelled or anything. Nothing. So that was my worst experience.
Yeah,
that doesn't happen very often.
yeah, but we see that transparency definitely is one thing that really sets up trust in partnerships. So on the other side of this relation, Tanya, did you have similar experiences or other to give some insights?
Yeah, well, I agree. Yes, those are, for example, bad bad examples. For example, if you book someone and then the job doesn't appear and that you don't communicate it to the freelance translator, that's really, yeah, that's not good. And that's, as you say, I hope it really happens not so often, but it does happen sometimes. And I think it's important to of course communicate it right away to the translator if the client hasn't sent any text in the booked time. And also what we try to do is that if that would happen, for example, that I usually ask other project managers, oh, do you have any jobs for, because this was a job that was cancelled, or so that, so that other project managers can prioritize that translator at the moment. That is one of the things that we usually do when that happens. Yeah. For example.
Yeah, and you, Tanya, and also Anne, also you're in a particular position because you're like mediators between clients and freelancers when you're dealing with projects involving clients and everything. How do you feel about that, Anne? And do you also have something to share about a best or worst experience about some exchanges that?
Well, so I don't work on a task level, which means that I'm not directly involved in sending out individual tasks to the vendors. So I'm more on a general, if there are general questions, then I would usually get involved, but usually the project manager sends out the job requests and the POs and so on that task-based level. But I'm happy to hear, how it's generally going, or if there's any issues that I can help out with to kind of mediate in some cases where, this is also very rare, but there have been cases where vendors have really cursed out project manager, and something might have been late or whatever, but they were really verbally abusive, I would say. And so that has happened, as I said, not very frequently, but then I would have to, kind of step in and take some measures. But also, the other way around, if there's positive feedback, then I'm I always encourage the project managers to let me know as well, particularly difficult translation was delivered, customer was happy, everything on time. I mean, punctuality, of course, should be a basic, but there's always some jobs that are more urgent than others, more critical, and I'm always happy to hear that feedback as well, because I can make a note in the profile, enter a comment, or just know for myself as I'm getting to know all the freelancers. So both are helpful.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And that is also one thing that we as project managers have to be a bit better with, actually, and to communicate this feedback more often, even the positive feedback. And
exactly.
Basically, some project managers do it more, some less. Maybe ask the client, were you happy with the translation or not? So usually it's that if we don't hear anything, it's good.
Yes,
so
but
it's
yeah, exactly. If you hear something, it's usually a complaint, but it has to go both ways.
It has to go both ways. So basically, that's, I think we're working on it a little bit in the project management side to get some feedback, more, any feedback. So
always appreciated.
Yeah,
exactly. Okay, so let's dive into what elements build this trustful relationship. So we've talked about some skills, some interpersonal skills, and also some linguistic skills. But what do you think, Tanya, and are the keys to build this relationship with external partners or freelancers? Do you think it goes also with communication agents, like I do with Acolad community, with resources we provide, etc.?
With yes, I think so. Well, the relationship that we as project managers usually develop with the translators is through the project. So every time we have one specific project, that's when we get the contact with the translator, with the linguist, and that is where I think there is something to be worked with, definitely, between the project manager and the translator, to have this communication, because as we mentioned before, lack of communication is this thing that could lead to unnecessary problems or unnecessary difficulties in a project, for example. So it's important for us to be really clear. And also the responsiveness we mentioned before, that is also one of the things that I think improves a lot the relationship, like, so we trust each other, the translator and the project manager.
Also because you're communicating often with freelancers, and the more you communicate with them, the more you get to know them, and so you know how they work, what in which conditions they prefer to work, and also that you can adapt some things in process for them. I don't know how do you feel about that, Magali, but in Enos, but do you agree that the more you communicate, the more you can also adapt some requirements?
Yes, I think communication is really the most important thing. And when you're working on a project, I would say that the translator should not be afraid to contact the project manager and ask a question. I think it's better to ask a question than just deliver the translation with, still some doubts. So if you have a question, say it. Don't send an email every 5 minutes, but if you have a question, an important question regarding the project, say it. And I think one of the things we haven't mentioned yet is sometimes I think we have to say no. So sometimes, and it happened to me recently, one of the agencies I work with a lot sent me a request about a very interesting project, huge word count, seemed really interesting, but it was a bit far from my areas of specialization. So the project manager said, we've been working with you for so long, we're pretty sure you could do it. And so I had a look at the source documents, and I knew that it was, for me, too far from what I'm used to doing and comfortable with. So I said to them that I would actually turn the project down, not because I didn't want to work on an interesting project, of course, but because I didn't feel comfortable enough to deliver my usual standard of quality, which is something I find really important. And the project manager got back to me and said, well, thank you, because some translators might have just said yes and maybe delivered something that was a bit, average quality.
Yeah.
And then that means that at the end, there's a client that is not going to be really happy with what he or she receives. So for me, saying no sometimes is also a way of building that relationship. Like, this I can do, but this I'm afraid I can't do. It works with deadlines too. Don't accept a project if you know you don't have enough time to do it properly. Offer an alternative. Sometimes the client might be able to extend a little bit if that's possible. But if you feel like you're going to have to work 24/7 and that's going to reflect on the quality of your work, then say no. So I know it's not easy, especially for people who may just be starting, but I think you have to always be transparent with the project manager in terms of what you can or can't do, well, whether skills or just deadlines.
That completely rejoins what you said earlier, because when you have to say that you're an expert in that field, and this proves it. So this establishes you as an expert in this area, and you're more likely to be trusted and chosen for a project. Yeah. What do you think about Enos? Do you agree with Magali?
Oh, completely. I completely agree. I think it's very important to be able to say no. Sometimes it's very, very difficult, because as soon as you have some time and you are you feel comfortable with the subject field and everything, you always try to help and do it. But sometimes even not only with regarding specialization, but also the time needed. And if you're going to end up completely tired, you won't pay enough attention to what you're doing, and that's going to hinder the quality of your work. And I think that's very, very important. And yes, I think it's very important to be honest with the project manager and explain anything you don't understand. You ask for explanations, and it's important also, as Magali said, not to send plenty of emails, but try to group them all. Well, in Acolad, there's this M9 spreadsheet where you can group all your questions. I find that's very, very useful. And it's great to have the opportunity to deal with the project manager, to work as an interface with the final client. And I think that's great. That's very important, especially when it's quick.
Yeah. Exactly. Tanya, and what do you think about that? Do you have something else to add to what Magali and Enos said?
I would agree that saying no can actually build trust, because then you're confident in what you deliver. And I would add that quick rejections of jobs are also appreciated, because then we can move on to the next. So if it's a very quick no, it's always appreciated, because then we can assign elsewhere without losing a lot of time, just from that perspective.
Yeah, I agree. Yes, exactly. That it's a very good, and if we get a quick no, then it gives us a chance to get the job in time anyway. And another thing that you also mentioned, Magali, is also that even you could take the job, but not at that deadline, and always you could say an alternative deadline. It's not always that everybody does, but that's very appreciated too, actually, because sometimes we can extend a deadline. maybe a couple of days or something. So always, if there is an option possible, then we appreciate it.
Yeah, totally. So, what are the non-linguistic aspects of a project or on a work cycle, life cycle at Acolad, on which we can help you? It's more for Magali and Enos. What do you think are the aspects on which Acolad can help you regarding, for example, communication, the design, or even providing resources and training? And cat tools, because I can see a cat with Magali, so not this kind of cat tool, but
yes, I'm sorry about that. It's a baby cat, and she keeps coming back to me. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I think non-linguistic aspects, I would mention clear billing procedures so that you know where you're going and you know what you have to do at the end of the month or twice a month or whatever, depending on the agency and what they prefer. Technical help sometimes, when you have an issue with a project, a Trados package or whatever. Sometimes it's really nice to have someone who can actually step in and say, I'm going to sort this out. Feedback, we said that before, but really feedback when things are running smoothly too, and not just because there's been an issue with one particular translation. That's something I find really valuable. And I think I would also add the opportunity to network a bit with other translators, whether it's with, through a webinar. One of the agencies I work with one day offered the translators they work the most with to gather in Paris for a fun evening. There were people coming from all over Europe, actually. And it was really nice because it was getting to know the project managers better, getting to know other translators too. So that was something that really, for me, it was one of the best memory in all my translation career. That possibility to really spend time with other people that you know, but you don't really know, if you see what I mean, because you exchange emails and sometimes phone calls every day or every week, but being with them in the same room and just share a drink, and wow, it was amazing. So this is something I would love to do with other agencies I work with regularly, of course.
Yeah, exactly. And do you agree, Enos, too?
Oh yes, I totally agree. And that's something. What you were telling us is something we were about to do with another agency just before the pandemic, and we had to cancel. But it was very nice because we would have met in France, knowing, well, this client. I think I worked for them since 1998. And right from the beginning, and we were going to be meeting with other translators as well. It would have been great. Well, I hope we will be able to do it someday. And it's very funny because you actually know other PMs and so on, but you have never met them, and that's something which, it's the bad part of our job, that social relationships are forgotten a little bit. But well, some emails with smileys and nice messages in the morning asking how are you doing and so on. I think that's we really appreciate that. And I know when I write to a PM, generally I'm smiling as if I were seeing them in front of me. And it's something, yes, it's something that we would appreciate. And well, apart from that, other help they can give us, well, I think it's technical stuff. I've learned a lot with from project managers, even though I use Trados from, now Trados Studio from right at the beginning, and to 20 something years, 25 years, I think. Well, I've learned, even though I've learned a lot from them, a lot of clues and so on. asking for help from technical staff, and they are able, because they are also in contact with the technical department, so they get a lot of feedback from them as well. So it's good to ask.
Yeah, always ask, always. It's better to give everything, to give, and then take what you get. So we are going near the end of the roundtable. So we are going to close this with one question for the four of you. What would be your ultimate tip for avoiding mistakes, misunderstandings when communicating with project managers? I'm starting with Magali.
Be honest all the time.
Be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about Enos, your ultimate tip?
Yes, same one. Be honest.
Be honest.
Don't pretend you can do something you cannot do, and ask plenty of questions.
Great, honest, transparent.
Do not overwhelm, but try to get information. Yes.
Yes, and curious about projects, and your ultimate best practice.
I would say ask questions. If you're not 100% sure, that's what I always tell, I always told my team as well. Don't guess. If you're not 100% sure, it's always best to double check. We're happy to answer any questions in advance. Sometimes you assume something should be done a certain way, or you don't want to send another email or bother the project manager, but it is appreciated to clarify up front. So don't hesitate, truly.
Yeah, being confident, honest, transparent, curious. And what about you, Tanya? Your best tip?
Yeah, well, I agree totally with all of that. So that is, I would agree. I don't have anything to add. But from our project management side, I would say clarity. So, to be clear from our side. That is a tip that for our part, I would say, when we send jobs to the translators.
Yeah. And for myself, I will add kindness and support. So talking about support, unfortunately, everyone, we don't have the time for question and answers, but we had compiled questions thanks to Ludivine, so we will answer them and give the link so you can see them afterwards. And you can have the link to the recording or post, so you can see it whenever you can in the next few days. So thank you very much, ladies. It was a very interesting and a very nice exchange. I'm really happy to have you. And I've learned some things from you too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was wonderful
talking to you.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you too for listening too and giving tips too. So I'm going to wish you a lovely weekend ahead and a lovely weekend to everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a nice weekend.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice weekend.
Bye.